Recording in progress.
Hello everyone, this is Father Evan Winter and I'm giving my presentation on William Byrd's Mass for Three Voices. Alright, so William Byrd. William Byrd was a English composer who lived from the years 1543 to 1623. This means that he was doing a lot of his work during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. Now, Queen Elizabeth I had a very notable reign, as you know. William Shakespeare lived and worked under Queen Elizabeth I, as did a lot of other wonderful artists and musicians, but it was a difficult time to be a Catholic. Queen Elizabeth I very much preferred the Church of England established by her father, King Henry VIII, and Catholics were forced to worship metaphorically underground. It was a capital crime to be a Catholic priest in Queen Elizabeth I's England, and so they were worshiping in secret in people's homes. William Byrd was a Catholic. He did work in Anglican churches and cathedrals and wrote music for Anglican services, but he also wrote music for Catholic masses and attended Catholic masses in secret when he was able. So he wrote three different Catholic masses: the Mass for Three Voices, the Mass for Four Voices, and the Mass for Five Voices. We'll be looking at the Mass for Three Voices. So that William Byrd's Mass for Three Voices is written for cantus, tenor, and bass. So we would usually perform that probably with alto, tenor, and bass. In his time, the cantus part would probably have been sung by a boy or by a man singing falsetto. It does not have any accompaniment. It is possible to perform this Mass with either soprano, soprano, alto, or tenor, tenor, bass, or tenor, baritone, bass by transposing it. You can transpose it up a fourth or down for soprano, soprano, alto, or down a fourth or fifth for tenor bass or tenor baritone bass. I believe the one time I was participated in singing this Mass, I believe we were performing a transposed down version with tenor, baritone, and bass. So the Mass for Three Voices is in many ways a typical late Renaissance work. It's got plenty of polyphony with a small amount of homophony, and the harmonies, rather than being conceived of as like chords that are stacked, they emerge from the harmonization of the three vocal lines. To give you a taste of this, I would like to show you the Kyrie and then the beginning of the Gloria. The Kyrie, you're going to hear a lot of homophony, and then the Gloria, you'll begin to see the polyphony start to come in. The Mass gets more polyphonic as it goes along. So the Gloria is more polyphonic than the Kyrie, the Agnus Dei is more polyphonic than the Gloria, and so on. So you can hear the homophony here. Gets to a little bit of polyphony at the end. And then the start of the Gloria, the Kyrie is very short, so we'll get into a little more on that in a moment. Begins homophonically. You can see the polyphony come in here. All right. This setting of the Mass uses the complete Latin text of the Ordinary of the Mass, so the Kyrie, the Gloria, the Creed, the Sanctus and Benedictus, and the Agnus Dei. And it doesn't add anything. It's the straight text, no telescoping, no troping, just the straight text. It will occasionally repeat phrases for musical purposes. You might hear the same phrase several times in a row with different musical settings or in different voices, but it's not an added text, it's just a repeated text. Now, William Byrd was writing these masses for a small persecuted group of Catholics, not a large choir. So these would have been used, most likely, at a real actual Mass, but probably one celebrated by a small group of people in someone's home. not in a large church. So you can just imagine a small group of people maybe gathered around a big dining room table. The priest is at the table. They're all at the other end of the room trying to fit in there and singing this Mass, a few people at a time. Now, the Tridentine Mass had recently been standardized by Pope St. Pius V, and so there was a renewed emphasis during these days on the use of the full text and the use of the correct text. So William Byrd was being an obedient Catholic composer, but he was doing so not just because it's the right thing to do, but because there was a renewed emphasis on that in his time. So if you wanted to put this Mass together as something you would do at your church or in your concert, some things to consider, some musical elements, expressive elements, rehearsal elements. So first of all, it uses very free rhythm. Even in the short selection we saw earlier, you noticed there were several changes of time signature. The original notation didn't have time signatures. Those would be added later by certain editors. But if you are going to do it with time signatures, they're going to be changing a lot. The polyphony uses imitative counterpoint. It's not just three melodies that are unrelated to each other than that they harmonize. The melodies are similar. They imitate almost like you might see in a Baroque fugue or something like that. It's not a straight fugue, it's not a straight canon, but it is imitative counterpoint. And the form is following the text. Each section, it's not A, B, A, B, A, C, A, or whatever. It's Kyrie, Gloria, Credo, Sanctus, Agnus Dei, and in those, the form follows the text. Now, there are some similarities from part to part. Probably the most notable similarity is between the Benedictus and the Agnus Dei, which musically begin in very similar ways. I'll show you the end of the Sanctus and then the beginning of the Agnus Dei. That way, you can see what I mean. You'll also get to see what some of his more polyphonic settings or polyphonic sections perhaps look like. The end of the Sanctus. Very polyphonic here. I just love it. Comparison, the beginning of the Agnus Dei. You can see it begins with basically the same phrasing, Agnus Dei, the same notes as the Benedictus. Such a nice imitative polyphony. One other musically notable section would be the Creed. In the Renaissance era, the Creed, of course, is the longest text in the Mass Ordinary, which means it doesn't always get kind of the full polyphonic treatment. But in this Mass, William Byrd takes his time. We have a very polyphonic Creed with also some cool text painting. So let's take a look at some of that. So we'll take a look at the part of the Creed which deals with the Incarnation, because that's one of those times where you can see some of the fun text painting. The full polyphony on the Creed. Ascending at the Descendit. The Incarnatus Est, there's a modulation to a darker key. All right, so some things for you to consider. in putting this together. This is a full and joyful mass. It has a full sound. It's joyful, but it's also intimate, right? Intended for a small group of performers. Intended in a sense for a small space. Joyful but not loud and in your face, right? Kind of perfect for the mass, actually. It makes the text very clear. It is not hard to follow what they are saying. This is music that would add to the mass without distracting from it. There's room for plenty of expressive dynamics and tempo changes. I am using the Tallis Scholars rendition of this piece for this presentation, and it's they put in quite a bit of dynamics and tempo changes, and it fits very nicely. And there is some text painting, but it's not distracting. It's enough where you can see, okay, I can see what he was doing there, but not so much where if you're listening to it, it would like stick out in your face and distract you. If you are trying to do this piece in your concert or at a mass, some things to think of as the conductor for the rehearsals. You have to be prepared for changes in meter. We talked about that might throw some people off. There's also quite a few voice crossings, more than I expected in a piece from this era, and some unusual accidentals. When I was trying to run through the top line especially, there were some times where you'd get some unusual sharps or flats that would then immediately be changed in the next measure, and which did not feel as comfortable as they sometimes do in music from this era. Sometimes the text goes by a little more quickly than you might be expecting, so you might need to practice those parts a little bit extra. And the range can be quite difficult. As written, the bass gets really high. If you transpose it down to do this with tenor baritone bass, for example, on the other hand, the bass will get quite low. A good bass should be able to handle it, but depending on who you have to work with in your choir, it may be a little much range-wise. And finally, we got to talk about the Kyrie. In the Tridentine Mass of Byrd's day, the Kyrie would have been repeated 3 times. Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison, Christe eleison, Christe eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison. And in the Novus Ordo, we do each section twice, right? This Mass is only written for each Kyrie to be sung once, which means you're either going to have to repeat sections 3 times, or you're going to have to find another way around that if you're using this at Mass. Maybe you chant it twice and then sing the polyphonic setting. Who knows, right? But the Kyrie needs a little work to actually fit into a Mass, even a Tridentine Mass of Byrd's day. Anyway, this is a beautiful piece of music. I hope that you are inspired by this to program it sometime, and we will see you all later.